Hello, I am John Layden, and I am with Pastor John Wesley Smith, who has been church planning for a while. And I wanted to use him for my assignment project on my church planning interview. And so, John, can you just briefly share with us your experience with church planting and where you've planted churches?
Sure. The first time I planted a church, I was living in Arkansas. Uh, had recently actually been appointed as um, church planting director for the state of Arkansas for the Baptist Missionary Association of Arkansas. Um, we started a church in Southwest Little Rock um, on South University um, back in '91. Uh, that church plant was interesting. I started with an unlimited budget. Had four other full-time staff before we even began our first day. We utilized a lot of things to start that church. Second church I started was in Naples, Texas. Not necessarily the second church, but it was another church that I started, Naples, Texas. We started that church with just me, my wife, and my oldest daughter. Uh, that church existed until um, 2 years ago. Um, it's no longer in existence. A third church that we started is in Plano. It's still going. Plano Richardson area outside of Dallas. Uh, it was a large church plant. We had about 60 people committed to the church plant before we started, and that church plant we also hired an outside agency to help. Um, that church plant right now is running about 700 in attendance in that area.
That's awesome. Now, for the assignment, we have to ask someone who has experience in church planting. If you were to meet with someone who's thinking about planting a church, what advice or what would you say within 5 minutes? The advice that you would give them.
Uh, the first thing I would say is make sure that uh, let's see. First thing I would say is discover where God wants you to plant a church. Um, get it solidified in your mind before you go too many steps into the process. Find out, where does God want me? Maybe not necessarily the exact city, but definitely the region that God is calling you to. The second thing is that I would do probably a variation of spiritual mapping so that I can understand the area, so I'll know what are some spiritual forces that are being dealt with in that area, what strongholds exist, and begin to pray. Uh, I would hold massive amounts of prayer gatherings with my team, and which brings me to the third point. There's no way in the world I would start a church again without a team. I would have to have a team. I think the days of the Lone Ranger church planter is over. Successful church plants now overwhelmingly are comprised of a team of people who share in the same vision, who believes that God is calling them to a region. Matter of fact, you can find on websites such as churchstaffing.com and other places where people are trying to start churches, and they're asking people to relocate to help them start churches, and not even offering them a salary, not offering them any kind of pay package. And people are moving from one coast to the other coast to start churches. I think a new church plant in the infancy stage should be comprised of a lot of prayer. One of my professors who started a church in Las Vegas, Dr. Dave Early, uh, who's also, I would consider him a friend. He he moved from Virginia, Lynchburg, and relocated to Las Vegas and brought probably 40 people with him. And they spent the first 6 months just praying 8 to 12 hours a day, just praying, laying out before God for the city of Vegas. And that they've already started two satellite churches, three churches altogether, but two satellite churches. So I would say definitely have a team. I would also say on that team that you would need to do something similar to Uniquely You profile, where you actually discover their disc profile and their spiritual gifts so that they can be plugged in the right places in ministry. The other thing is I would hang around church planters. There are a lot of great avenues for church planters today to connect with each other and expand their horizon of sorts. There's one major conference that I would definitely advise people to go to, would be called Exponential. We have Exponential West, Exponential East, and for 4 days you're just inundated with some of the world's best church planters, church strategists. You're able to mingle with church planters from all over the world. That is a non-denominational type gathering. Also, within the ranks of Southern Baptist Convention, you have Send North America every other year, so it's not as expansive as Exponential, but they'll have 15 to 20,000 people there who the whole focus is church planting, and it's not denominationally specific. When I went to the one in Nashville, there were people who were AG, people who were Presbyterian. I mean, they had a whole smorgasbord of people. So I would say get connected in something like Exponential, like something like Send North America, and then also the Orange Conference that goes on in Georgia. That would be a great thing. Also, now what I would say is get someone who is a experienced church planter to help you with all the ins and outs and how do you do this, how do you do that, that will mentor you. For me, it was Aubrey Malphurs. I just called Aubrey up and told him, hey, dude, I need to know about church planting. I need to know the ins and outs. I know you wrote the book, The Nuts and Bolts of Church Planting. And I just started talking to him. And it ended up, Aubrey was mentoring me approximately 2 to 3 days every week for about an hour and a half each time on church planting stuff. And I even discovered his limitations, because he told me, he said, John, if you're looking to start an African American church, I really don't know how to start an African American church. And what he told me, he said, I know how to start a white church. And but I'm telling you, Aubrey helped me tremendously. And so that's, I guess, in a sense, that's what I would tell you. If I had another 80 hours, I could go in much more detail. But that's what would be my take on church planting.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for your time.